Okay, I think I am live here. Yeah. So thanks for joining us here. We'll be starting in just a second. I'm going to go with Sans webcam here. It was initially going to be doing a different format to program to stream from, but last minute it didn't work out. So I'm kind of scrambling here. But that's fine. We'll be okay. If you're just joining us live, welcome. If you're joining us after the fact, if this has already happened, you can just skip ahead a couple minutes. We're going to give more people a chance to join us, but we're going to get started here in just a few minutes. So, yeah. Just checking some things here and making sure that this still works. Don't know why it would not. But, good to be sure. While we're waiting, I guess, as usual, I'd like to extend a great thank you to Yankee Bookstore for sponsoring this program. And all of our programs actually this year, History Chats, and on a weekly basis, as well as our History Speaks, which is a monthly thing. So yeah, thanks to them and to all of our members for letting us do this program. And yeah, you know what? I think maybe we'll get started here. Just checking. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we're going to get started here. Hopefully everything sounds good. Again, I'm kind of going to do without a webcam here today. Hope that's all right. But we're going to talk about Wausau Insurance, or Employers Mutual, as you may know it if you're old enough to remember those days. After I get through the program, it'll be about 15, 20 minutes as usual. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, please do feel free to put those in the chat or comment section, depending on what format you're watching this. And I will get to those towards the end. But I think we'll get started here with Wausau Insurance. So as if you've been watching the last few weeks, you will know that we are doing the theme for this month is putting Wausau on the map. And yeah, so putting Wausau on the map. Oh, just gonna look at that. Whoops, there we go. Yeah, putting Wausau on the map. So these are the companies that got the name Wausau out there, that people would recognize the name Wausau from because of Wausau papers, or owning Wausau home, or something like that. Well, this Wausau Insurance, or Employers Mutual of Wausau, as it was known for a long time, is probably the best example of this. Because as we will see, Wausau Insurance, their identity is really tied in with the identity of being from Wausau. And it kind of works both ways. And to give a good example of this, I want to show you. Let's jump to the centennial celebration in 1972. Wausau celebrated 100 years since it was created as a city. It existed before that, but as a city, as a chartered city, it was 100 years. And so it was a big celebration. As you can see here, July 1st through 8th, it was a whole week-long celebration. Asking for help here. One thing I want to point out, though, is this thing down in the bottom here. This is the Wausau. This is a special logo, or an emblem that they called it. So this was actually submitted as part of a competition. Here's Sid Kyler, noted artist and figure in the area. He judged the submissions to see which one would be best, and so he chose this one. But it's not the only one that was submitted. This is back in February, so this is a few months before the whole celebration, and this gets used all over the place, actually often in black and white, although it was designed in color to make use of that. But you often do see it in black and white. But there's a bunch of other ones that get submitted too. So here are the top 8 minus the top one that gets chosen. And you can see there's some similar imagery here. It's a lot of it. I think I like this because it shows really clearly, here's what these people thought Wausau's history was. There's Rib Mountain in the background in a lot of these. There's, lumberjack with the hand axe. You've got the oak or the oxen, things that there's a word for that, which is blanking at the moment, but history of agriculture and lumber, and then you have the trains, the depots. I want to shout out this one, bottom right here, by the way. That was actually submitted by George Elafusos, who, if you're familiar with the Historical Society here, if you've ever come and taken a tour or come in and at the main desk, you probably met George. He passed last year, unfortunately, but I think he would get a kick out of showing this as well. So this was his submission. Obviously, a very talented artist in his own right. But yeah, he volunteered and worked here for about over 50 years. So he's a good friend of the Historical Society. But there you go, George. It's for you. So, but I think it's really interesting to show this, that there is a depot. Because, if you take this in a vacuum, and you watching this probably know a little bit about the depot's history, its association with, why I'm talking about this with Wausau Insurance. But, if taken in a vacuum and you didn't know that association, this would be a really strange choice, because it's just a depot. The depots here were pretty nice. They are pretty nice, right? But they're not super different than what you'd see in other places. And if you think about it, in 1971, the last passenger train went through, the last time they used the depots. And even in the late 1960s, they weren't in great repair. And yet here they are. Like, can you imagine next year, for the 150th anniversary, 150th anniversary, if the city of Wausau asked people to submit suggestions, and we got, the Wausau Center Mall, which, it's kind of not that far in the past, and it'd be kind of a strange thing to show. But here you have the depot, and the reason for that obviously is not just because of it's because of this logo. Now you may think this is something from Employers Mutual, but this is actually from the city of Wausau. This is I think this is like a directory for the city. It's the cover here, and in the late 70s, mid to late 70s into the 80s, I believe they used this logo, which is very familiar. If you're aware of this logo, where this is going. But it's not just here. Here's another example. In 1976, as part of Beautification Week, the fire department put out newly refurbished and painted trash cans for the city, and sure enough, there is the logo right on the trash can. So where does this come from? Well, we have to go back to 1911 for this. We don't have to, but let's do it anyway. In 1911, you had the creation of the Employers Mutual Limited Liability Insurance Company of Wisconsin, which, for maybe obvious reasons was shortened to Employers Mutual in many cases, because it's a bit of a mouthful there. So this company was basically established by businessmen here in Wausau who, in response to the passage of a landmark piece of legislation in the state of Wisconsin, which provided for the first time, is the first constitutionally upheld workers' compensation law. So this basically established a way that people could get workers' compensation. Now, they didn't make it compulsory, because that had led to, you had that caveat there of constitutionally upheld, because, for example, New York had a version of this, but they made it, here's what you need to do. Everybody needs to have workers' compensation. And then, the Supreme Court said, yeah, you can't do that. And so that, but the idea here is that in Wisconsin, this is going to be the thing of the future. We'll make it as a possibility, and the market will eventually realize this is a very good idea. And it certainly had, this is a whole other story, of course, that we could go down this tangent to, understand why the workers' compensation is a better system than the common law system, where basically if you got hurt at work, you'd have to sue your employer in order to get any compensation, which is, not ideal. But yeah, so Employers Mutual gets founded basically to underwrite some of the local businesses, specifically the very first, planned workers' compensation policy that's ever, given under this new law, which is the first in the country, is actually by Employers Mutual for a paper company down in Mosinee, which at the time is the Wausau sulfite fiber company, but is going to change its name to Mosinee Paper. So they're right there at the ground floor. Now, originally, this new compensation idea is workers' compensation insurance is not super well received. A lot of businessmen are, they're hesitant to give up the control and the power over their workers that the old system gave them. But as time goes on, despite the early years of trying to fight to get people to recognize the importance of this, it does end up working out. So, this leads to, by the 1920s, they are expanding to they branches all over the country. They start property insurance claims in 1920. In 1938, they get into fire insurance. They're expanding. They're growing. That's going to lead us to a situation where it's we're very proud. Maybe not in 1913, 1912 when it's getting started, but by the 30s, this is actually probably from the mid 1940s. This image here, but here we're entering Wausau, and it's sponsored by the Wausau City. Wausau didn't put this up, but the Employers Mutual did. But that's just something that you typically would see in the other direction. So we're proud of having Employers Mutual. Now, the logo is kind of interesting here. We can actually look at, here's sort of the development of the logo over the years. They go from, handshakes to, during World War II, you got to have the eagle on top to show, patriotism, and, we're doing our part, which they did during the war. And yeah, this is part. I'm going to go a big shift though in the 1950s. This is kind of emblematic of their sort of understanding that they need a logo to represent them, but their identity is still kind of, we're not sure what that's going to be. So in 1950, they have this policy, kind of famous in the history of Employers Mutual, where they say 50 in 50. They want to sell $50 million of claims in premiums in the year 1950, and they do. Okay, which is great. They're on top of, they're growing. How do you continue to grow though? And that's the question. And the answer is they need to maybe create a better brand for themselves. So they end up going to the best, the most success, or the biggest advertising firm in the country at this point, J. Walter Thompson Company in Chicago, and they say, "What should we do? Come up with an ad campaign for us." And so they send some guys out, they, interview some people, they kind of take stock of the company. Then they come to Wausau and they pitch to the president at the time, Hans Hagge. And they, pitch this idea of what they want to do. And Hagge is his response was like, okay. And then he left. And apparently then they had to explain to him that, to the ad guys that means go ahead, because, he didn't say no. He'd say no if he didn't like it. So they went ahead, and that leads to this, which is the ad that ran in the Saturday Evening Post. That was their kind of favorite magazine. Although they did, have ads in Life magazine and Sports Illustrated and a variety of other different, magazines and journals at that time. But this is the big one. So January 16th, 1953, it actually ran opposite from the editorial page for Saturday Evening Post. So it's called a good location. Let's break this down a little bit. First, you have the image, which is actually designed by Everett McNear. He got $500 for designing this. And there's an interesting story behind this. So this is obviously the depot, but it wasn't intended to be the depot initially. Initially, they actually wanted the courthouse. We had this great, stone courthouse in the center of town. That's kind of where the idea of, the skyline in the background kind of comes in. But in 1952, we tore it down. And so, well, we can't send somebody over to draw this because it doesn't exist. So let's use the depot. It's kind of plan B. But it actually worked out pretty well. Now, you might wonder, if you're familiar with the area, we have two depots. We had two depots that were operating as, different train, lines. Well, this is actually kind of a synthesis of them. So you got this one here. You can see the brackets here. This kind of indicates it's this depot. And this depot is actually the one on Grant Street. But, and yes, it does have the Wausau there, but the architecture doesn't quite all match. And also this is definitely not the skyline that you'd see from this. And so then we go the other one, and this is an older version we can see in the background, downtown Wausau. This is on, the bridge just outside of, downtown Wausau. Scott Street, I think you'd put that there. Yeah. But again, then you don't get the brackets in the same way. So it's kind of a synthesis of both. So there's a fun bit of trivia for you. It's actually, next time somebody asks, what depot is this? It's kind of both and neither. And then you get the copy, which lays out this idea for what this insurance, the ad company wanted to push this company. And the justification here, and they paint it as, opening line here is the fishing's good near Wausau, which is a strange thing to start out an ad campaign for an insurance company. But that's the kind of idea that's what they're pushing here. And their justification here is that Wausau is sort of, Employers Mutual is at a crossroads. They could either, they've gotten to the point where they either need to relocate, like many other companies were, to a place like New York or Chicago or, one of the big cities where there's lots of commerce happening, or you need to lean into the fact that you're not one of those companies, which is what this is all doing. We're this big multi-million-dollar company in 1950s, but we're not located in the big city. We're still at heart good people to do business with. That's the kind of pull that they use. We're still, we're located in the city in the northern part of Wisconsin, this, sleepy little city where the fishing's good. And that's the sort of Midwest sort of personable environment where we're going to treat you good because that's the sort of people that we are. And this is going to spark a much larger ad campaign. Now, to give an idea, this is kind of what they were doing before. These are all from like 1949, I believe. So this one was in Life. It's saying some stuff, services that they save. It's explaining, here's what we do. Here's what we can offer you. I think this is just a cool image. You can tell that the designer had some fun putting the magazine opened up to the page that they're showing and kind of doing that, infinite thing. Although only so far because they were hand drawing it. But yeah, these are fun images. They're fun concepts, but they don't really create a brand. Yeah. So, compare that with what comes after. In 1954, after that first, landmark issue in the Saturday Evening Post, this is what it more looked like. You got Red Mountain in the background. It's Wausau story. And that's going to really, and the copy is really talking about here's where we're from. And this is going to continue, right? 1956, you see, these are the first 3 ad campaigns that they run, the sort of ad copy that they do. And you can see here, they're comparing it now to other places, Chicago, a little bit of New York, a little bit of St. Louis, but, we're still talking about Wausau very clearly. And also worth noting that you see the brands here. So they have this little logo up here, the famous Wausau Story logo, but we're also using the old one. But now, in 1956, they transition, and now this becomes their logo, which it will do, I think, until like the 1980s when they kind of redesign it to be a little bit more streamlined. It was never designed to be a logo. It was supposed to be just a nice image, but it works out really well. Now, this is the Wausau Story sort of branding. This is a campaign. There's a bunch of them, and I'm going to jump ahead to the 1980s. I should double check that you can hear this one before I start playing it. Give me a second here. Here we go. So this is a television, obviously. So Saturday Evening Post was where they preferred. It was their big relationship. They also then, when Saturday Evening Post went under, they got into this relationship with this new program called 60 Minutes, which you may have heard of. It's become quite popular. It's one of those long-standing staples of the news. Yeah, they start running ad. So this is one of their famous campaign here. Hopefully the audio is all right here. Let's just run it here. You may have seen this before.
The word is Wausau, a small town in Wisconsin.
Wausau.
So this is one of their famous campaign here. That's right. You can hear that.
W-A.
There we go.
The word is Wausau, a small town in Wisconsin.
Wausau. W-A-R-S-A-W. W-A-S-A-H. Wausau. W-A-U-S-A-U. There's a USA in the middle, a W-A up front,
That's
and
fine,
another U
Phyllis.
in back. That's Wausau.
Thank
As
you.
in Wausau Insurance Companies.
That's fine.
The business insurance experts.
Thank you.
And there's that logo again. Yeah, so continues. Now, obviously, you can see that the name has changed here. Now we're Wausau Insurance Companies. That happened in the early 80s. There's a lot of name changes over the years. But anyway, this is the, we talk about, companies that put Wausau on the map. Here they are literally getting some actors from, some kid actors from Hollywood to, teach people how to spell the name Wausau. It's very much as part of that idea. Now, I will say that, if you're interested in the various ad campaigns, I didn't really want to go too deep into the various iterations, but Robert Gunderson, wrote a really great book called The Wausau Story. And I've actually pulled a couple images from the book for this presentation, but he's actually there. He starts with this campaign in the the 1950s. And he's through it, for the next few decades and literally writes the book. And it does a great job of, going into the understanding of here's why they did this, here's how they shifted this, and explaining the different campaigns. It gets a little kind of samey if you just lay it out if I had to do it in, 10 minutes. So if you want to know more, please, feel free to check that out. It's a great resource. I will say that he has a very specific perspective here. He's talking about it. He has his opinions, right? He was part of the process of coming up with all of these ideas and making ads. And his philosophy is there is bad advertising that sometimes we do. That's a term that he uses. And this is the idea that if you were to take out the Employers Mutual logo and you were just to put somebody else's logo on there, would you be able to tell the difference? And a lot of times, no. If it's just a witty thing that doesn't actually connect to the brand of what Employers Mutual is, that's maybe not as helpful. And so he thought that was very strong. And so throughout, he always advocated. And in the book, he certainly has his opinion voiced in that way. And again, this is one of the reasons why, this is such a great example of putting Wausau on the map and putting your hometown, because that was part of who they were. Earlier, this is big part of the idea coming to town. Here's the logo, right? We used the logo for the city of Wausau's emblem for a while. So, a great example here, 1940, they built this wonderful building in downtown Wausau. This was the home to Employers Mutual until 1967, when they opened up the finished building and moved over to the new on the west side, the big building there. And that became, their home, throughout the various, now Liberty Mutual, owns it, after, it was bought out a couple of times. We'll get into the corporate, stuff that happens with that, but, it's still there. But now, this becomes Wausau City Hall. That's what it is today. The park is still Hans Hegge Park. Hegge Park. So yeah, I mean, in a lot of different ways, the association with Wausau and Wausau Insurance is very strong, and that's why it's a good opportunity to say, put Wausau on the map. And I think maybe that's a good place to end it. You may be wondering, what are we talking about next week? This is the end of, and I will say it would be kind of interesting to come back and maybe do this again for other not Wausau companies. Obviously, we picked a lot of great examples of Wausau companies that have the name in there, but you could do the same thing for what put Colby on the map, or Mosinee, or Athens, or that sort of thing. So maybe we'll come back to this at a future date. But for next week and next month happens to be Historic Preservation Month, and so we are going to be talking about 4 different examples of buildings that illustrate kind of different eras, different aspects of historic preservation. And you may notice that the railroad depots, I didn't go into detail about the actual depots because you're going to have to talk about it in a few weeks. But yeah, there's some interesting stuff coming up for that. Always at 12:30 on Thursdays, or you can watch the video recording later. So yeah, and start with the Plummer House. Cool. So anyway, that's the program here. Let me do it from this side here. Yeah, here I am. Well, let's take a look and see if there's any questions. Again, thanks for joining us. If you have any other questions, this is a good time to put that in there. If I didn't get to something, or you wanted to know about something specific, Okay, so I did see, I did actually have Facebook up, and it looks like it maybe disappeared. But someone had asked specifically about the naming, about how sometimes it's Wausau's Employers Mutual or Employer Mutuals. There's like an S that kind of moves around. That's one of the very complicated things about this. It's not just one company. It starts as one company, the Employers Mutual Limited Liability Company or Corporation of Wisconsin, but eventually they changed the name to of Wausau, Employers Mutual, Employers Mutual. It kind of shifts because as they introduce other types of mutual insurance sort of plans that they do, fire insurance, property insurance. In the 60s they get into life insurance. It becomes a little bit more complicated because they've got sort of different areas, and so the overall company is often mutuals, but it's probably not worth getting into the specifics because it does just change all the time. But that's just kind of part and parcel. Most of the time, we just call it Employers or Employers Mutual because that's the way it is sometimes. And then Wausau Insurance, even though that's the overarching company is Wausau Insurance, although I think Employers Mutual might still be part of that. I don't know. It's complicated. But that's kind of the way, sometimes this is part of the process of companies as they evolve. Okay. Oh, so Michael asked about nationwide insurance. Yeah, so I guess I didn't want to get necessarily too deep into the later years because it does get kind of, again, you're dealing with lots of corporations and multi-million-dollar companies. It gets a little complicated. It did get bought out by Nationwide. Wausau Insurance companies did, and it operated for a while as sort of like a imprint of it or like a subsidiary. So it was still Wausau Insurance, but it was like a nationwide company. And then eventually, when Liberty purchases it, it just kind of gets pulled into the Liberty family of companies. And I don't think it's necessarily as autonomous as it was, at least initially, for Nationwide. I think when Nationwide bought it, it was more of, here is this robust company. It has a brand and a history behind it. Whereas, I don't want to say that that's not important to Liberty, but I think as time goes on, it's a different situation. I guess I'm not necessarily prepared or able to talk specifically about all of that. I'll leave that to somebody who's more aware and familiar with that. But that is kind of the process. And towards the late 90s and early 2000s, you do see it change, and that's why it's not Wausau Insurance anymore. But yeah. All right. Well, I think that might be the extent of the questions, which is great. I appreciate the questions and the comments and everything. And yeah, so I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and we will see you next week for some historic preservation. So hope you're excited to watch that as well. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.